yes.
Come in, hey, yes. Well, if you wait all year, to mash up the place, Well, if you wait all year, to mash up the place, spread your hands and let go. Spread your hand in the air, everybody, spread your hands and let go. Hand in the air, why? Hey, come let me do it, let me do it, let me do it again. Come let me move it, let me move it, let me move it again. Come let me jump and spread out the hand.
And wave like we throw your stress away, to pay we bills on time. We working a 9 to 5, trying to stay alive. Folks, good evening. How are you doing? Nice to see you earlier. I thought I would start the program this evening with one of my favorite soca artists ever. I'm gonna do a little tribute to him later down in the session this evening, because we've not seen each other for a minute. I took a break because to be able to do this, I need to look after me. So to look after Olia, I had to look after me. So I took some time to look after me, and I dare say I took some time at the right time. So first, let me say happy Easter to everybody from the Catholic community that will be celebrating Easter, because I know outside of Christmas, this is the next most important thing on the Catholic calendar. And I've got tons of Catholic friends, went to a Catholic secondary school, spent 7 very, for me, good years at the school, made a number of lifelong friends. My bestest friend in life I made at that school. We've been together 30-something years. My God, she's Catholic. And because of her, I used to end up going to, what is called this thing again, boy? Legion of Mary. Like, I wasn't actively participating. She was in Legion of Mary. So I would like stick around and line with her. So as a result of that, I would say outside of the religion I grew up in my home, the other religion that I know the best would be Catholicism, as a result of my friendship with her. So happy Easter to members of the Catholic community. I also want to say Ramadan Mubarak to the Muslim community, because we are in the month of Ramadan, and very soon, when we hit sometime in early May, we as an entire national collective will benefit from observing the Muslim festival of Ramadan, because we will get ourselves a public holiday. And this year, I believe it falls on a Monday, so long weekend. So Easter long weekend, because we just allow the Roman Catholics and them to do their thing. Eid long weekend, because we just allow the our Muslim brothers and sisters to be able to do their thing. We're also going to be heading towards Indian Arrival Day, where we're celebrating persons from the persons who arrived as indentured laborers from India. Passover, there have been members of the Christian faith, like smaller groups of the Christian faith, or people who practice Judaism here, because I know we do have people who are practicing Judaism here. So they would have done Passover. And then on this weekend as well, the Hindu faith would have celebrated Hanuman Jayanti. That would have been yesterday. Hanuman might be one of the few deities from the Hindu faith that I pay attention to in any significant way, and that's because, of course, he's a he's a warrior god, right? And because he's a deity that is in charge of things like warfare and warriorhood and thing. And all you know me, battle axe to the end now. So that's why I would kind of pay attention to Hanuman. So I think I've done all of the greetings that I need to greet and to do at this point in time. So let me also say good evening to everybody who is here on the live. Nice to be back. And we are going to, of course, make this season. So I was doing some maths. And in doing the maths, I was working out how many seasons that I've actually had. And if I was doing the counting properly, I've done we're like, this is, I think I'm going into my 5th season now. If it's not my 5th, then it's my 6th. Either which way, something very interesting happened when I wrapped up the last season there, which would have been the first season for the year that I ended sometime in, if we are now in April, it would have been sometime in March I would have wrapped that up, right? We at Newsauce hit 50,000 followers. Followers. 50,000 people from God knows where, because I ain't pay a cent to buy none of them, have shown up and decided that they like my page. As a matter of fact, not just like, it's 30 something thousand that like, but it's 51,000 and change that are following the page. And I'm a little bit overwhelmed. I feel a little bit choked up. I feel a little bit, how to say, grateful and humbled, because in all seriousness, for 50,000 people to decide when the month come, the week come, the day come, or whatever it is, they're going to be paying attention to the things that I'm saying, the information I'm putting up, the information I'm putting out there. I mean, well, you're listening to me. I'm happy to hear that you all are listening to me. So thank you very much. And no, Christopher, no bots. I don't have any bots on my Christopher Francois. I had to give him a little hail out and thing. I don't have bots on my page, because I don't pay to have followers and likes and that sort of thing. So let's get into it, because if I start, it could be long. Beach, you're getting kicks off of my applause. Anthony Morgan Beach getting kicks off of my applause, Beach, let me tell you something, It's 50,000 people, Beach. So it had to be loud applause. It's 50,000 people, no paid followers. And yes, thank you very much, Trisha. I appreciate this reliable source of information. I just make an effort. I just really try and, do the thing properly for all you. So let's get into it. Let's start, because we ain't been here for a while. So the first thing I want to talk about, because we didn't see each other for a while, and it's all kind of thing take place. As a matter of fact, the last time I was here, the absolute last live that I did with you all was about that Paria LMCS dive-in tragedy. I should turn it the other way around. The LMCS / Paria diving tragedy, because of course, everybody and their mother want to focus only on Paria. I decided, like many other persons, it had things that wasn't making sense here. The maths wasn't mathsing. I needed to be able to understand a couple things. And of course, in raising those issues, in pointing out that there were questions to be asked, we couldn't just run and jump to the conclusion and say Petrotrin this and Coast Guard that and whatever it is. People got very, very, very hot and bothered. So there are a number of things that happened while I wasn't around, and I would have put up posts about it. I might have put up story links. We might have had some heavy discourse taking place on some threads, because I tried to keep my social media presence going, even though I wasn't doing lives, right? So that was still taking place, and we were all still engaging in that way. So I have about 5 or 6 things that I want to touch on this evening. Of course, all of it stuff that would have happened before, and so we're going to have the opportunity to talk the things this evening, and all it is want to talk the things, right? So we're here to talk the things. So the first thing was that the slap. All right, the slap that I didn't, in all fairness, I didn't know about the slap until the next morning, because I didn't watch the Oscars. I have not looked at the Oscars in years. The other night I was trying to remember when was the last time I actively looked at the Oscars? Since we have social media, since we have YouTube, since we're in the era of being able to listen to things on demand, I've not stayed up to look at any of these award shows live. I tend to the next day look at some of the things that, some of the best clips from YouTube. So what had happened was this. Your girl get up about 2-3 in the morning. Daryl Akong, don't think I wasn't thinking about playing Hard Slap by Orange Sky. Don't think I wasn't thinking about it. I really wanted to cue up Hard Slap, and don't let me bust a slap in you. And I was like, nah boy, people gonna say, as a proponent of violence and things, so I ain't gonna cue it up. So I was dead to the world. Wasn't looking at the Oscars. Haven't looked at the Oscars in a while. Then got up and I was doing Wordle. So I'm just letting you all know, I'm that type of girl. I will get up at 2-3 o'clock in the morning and decide that I am going to figure out a word quiz. Right? So I was doing Wordle. And while I'm there trying to figure out which 5-letter word will fit into the Wordle clue that day or the Wordle quiz that day, my Google Assistant started pushing up, major stories. And the thing that was there, like 3 or 4 links, 3 or 4 stories, was this slap that Chris Rock got, right? And when I started to look at that, listen, it's a heaping set of thing I end up looking at. I watched the video of the slap. I went back, and of course, your girl thought a Google search one time. So I went and I do a Google search. I do a Google search to check to see, well, when was, does Chris Rock have a history with Jada Pinkett Smith? What is went on there, right? So I went and I did the search. Now, the slap between Chris Rock and Will Smith, that's not my major focus right now, tonight. I'm starting with the slap because this story had us as a collective, all of us who does be on Newsauce page and who does be on my personal profile, my Rhoda Barra profile, we were all talking about using physical violence as a way to solve problems, as a form of resolution for conflict, right? That is why I start up by talking about the slap. Not because I want to get into who was right and who was wrong, because my positions on it are publicly known by now. I don't agree with anybody getting up and walking onto a stage and slapping somebody as a form of conflict resolution, especially when the person has been hired to do a particular job. Whether he did the job effectively, offensively, whatever, I don't agree with. You pick up yourself and you get onto a stage and you attack a person. You know why? Because freedom of expression is a thing, right? Freedom of expression is a thing. And I sit here often saying things that loads of people would find offensive. Imagine if everybody who found something that I was saying offensive decided to walk in my house and slap me. Or let's say I was still on radio, right? Doing the radio program on mornings. Suppose every listener to that program who didn't agree with something that I had to say on the program, who didn't agree with my position, my take on something, who felt that what I was saying about any particular issue at that point in time was offensive to them, pick up the self, run in the station, run in the studio, and rest a slap on me because they feel offended. So people who were actively encouraging and endorsing Will Smith slapping Chris Rock, I felt they were missing a number of issues. And they were missing a number of issues because they seemed to think that there is always, at some point in time, a justification for resorting to violence as a way to solve conflict, to solve a problem. So that's why I wanted to start with this. Why? Because not too long after this slap that was heard around the world, that had everybody talking about who was right and who was wrong, and everybody saying, Oh, well, not everybody, but you had people who were firmly in the camp of supporting Will Smith, and their support of Will Smith was that Chris Rock had said something offensive. He had made a joke that was offensive, and so Will Smith was justified in walking on stage to slap Chris Rock. And not too long after that, we started to have a series of things take place here, all to do with abuse. And so let's make something very clear here. If your position is there are varying degrees of offense, and when you hit particular degrees of offense, then it is okay to slap, it is okay to hit, it is okay to resort to physical violence, then you cannot objectively have a problem with a man deciding he gonna chop your wife to death if the man feel he was offended enough. You cannot objectively have a problem with a parent beating a 6-year-old boy to death if the parent feel that the 6-year-old boy offend him or her enough. You cannot decide that you have a problem with a 16-year-old being beaten to death if the parents and them saying that they were offended by the 16-year-old's behavior, right? Because when I started looking at other conversations taking place on social media subsequent to this slap, I was like, we have a whole slew of persons, we have a whole percentage of this population who good with other people getting licks, you know. Once it's not them getting the licks, them good with other people getting licks, you know. And they good with justifying other people getting licks and other people being killed and other people being murdered because somebody offended somebody else, to the point where I saw a ruling coming out of the high courts, because a judge was involved, where a man who was up from murder charge was, after being on remand for 9 years, he was released. Now here's the story. He had a wife, and apparently he had a neighbor who was regularly taunting him and telling him, boy, I brush your wife, boy, I brush your wife, right? So of course he hearing all the time about who brush your wife, and I guess whether or not, you know, he enjoyed brushing the man's wife or whatever. And the guy eventually got riled up to the point where he picked up a brick and he bust the man's head and he killed him. The guy who did the killing, after being 9 years on remand, was released, let out of prison. And the judge, in her ruling, as part of her ruling, basically said that, you know, she could understand that, you know, that people can understand that the man was, you know, provoked into killing a person. Now, you see, when I hear justifications like that, I have to pause and ask myself, where are we going? So it was Justice Lisa Ramsumere Hines, I believe is the judge's entire name, or certainly Justice Hines. When I heard that, when I read the story in the papers, I actually messaged one of my friends, a lawyer, and I asked, can you find this full ruling for me? Because I want to be able to read the full ruling. I haven't yet gotten the full ruling, right? Because I want to be clear about the context in which the judge made that statement. Because I don't think we should be going down the road of justifying killing people because you feel offended, right? But let's get into things. So you have that slap from Chris Rock. From Will Smith to Chris Rock. Then you had this, right? Amar killing his wife, Omati. Now, this is a teacher at a primary school. He married, and he also had another relationship. This is based on media stories. So he and the wife had their problems. So of course, I mean, we all know the story of Amar and Omati, right? Because eventually, cameraman Ivan Tulsi would have put up a video, and we all saw the video clip, We all saw the recordings that the wife had on her phone, the deceased person had on her phone, that basically showed that she was experiencing a fair amount of abusive behavior within the in-laws' homes. And thereafter, there would have been news stories from that gave you her family side. And we would have heard that her family was encouraging her to stay in the marriage and to work things out. Now, there are a whole bunch of stories that I had up here for us to take a look at. So there's that. Then there's this story about what possessed her to commit murder. And, I saw these headlines, and these headlines got me upset. And they got me upset because when you start talking about what could cause a man to do something like that, and you start using language like what possessed Sir, right, to commit murder. When you use language like that, what you're doing is you're taking responsibility for actions away from the person. That's what you're doing. Because when you start saying things like, what could possess a man, you're saying that something else, some other entity, right, would have led to this man doing something that he ought not to have done. And it's the same foolishness that we would have heard the night of this event. Because when Will Smith got up onto stage to accept his award, he then started talking about how Denzel Washington came over to him and said, it's when you're at your highest that the devil shows up, and something to do with the devil, right? And there were two things Will said on that stage. One, the point about the devil and making it seem as if, there was some sort of, good versus evil battle going on there and some external thing forcing him to do that. And then also saying love makes you do crazy things. Now, when you make those kinds of statements, you are basically absolving yourself, like your conscious self, the self that people has argued on they were given free will, because I try to look at things from the side of practicing Christians here. And the reason I'm looking at things from the side of practicing Christians here is throughout the last 4 to 6 weeks, every single time somebody died or was murdered, you were hearing a lot of religious reasoning and a lot of group dynamics reasoning, right? Making sure that, people ain't feel shame and your family could hold your head up and that kind of nonsense. So Will Smith picks up himself, goes onto a stage to slap somebody because he was offended. And after the slap takes place, Will Smith does not he does not take responsibility for the slap. Right? I'm not making that up. He does not take responsibility for slapping the person. He gets up on stage and he talks about the devil and he talks about love making you do stupid things. Right? Or love making you do crazy things. So as a grown man who would have spent 50-something years of his life making decisions, when he makes a bad decision, it's not him who's responsible for making the bad decision. It's the devil and love, right? Satan make him do it. So then, of course, by proxy, if you're following that argument logically, he is not responsible for the good things he doing either. It means that every single time Will Smith does something, he's not doing it because he had the will. He's doing it because somebody else making him do it, right? That's when you start talking about the devil made me do it, that's what you're essentially doing. You are handing over responsibility for your actions to some other entity. So that happened with Will. It happened with Omati and Sue, right? With the whole what possessed him to commit murder, acting as if it was not his actions that was causing tension in the relationship, in the marriage. And that's the thing that blew my mind when I was following the story. I'm there following the story. I'm like, okay, all right. So Omati is there in a marriage, and she's in a marriage where people are not looking after her needs properly. People aren't validating her. People aren't lifting her up. People aren't helping her to become a better version of herself. Right? Because when you get into a marriage, when you get into a relationship like that with another person, you're there and you are expecting that with that person you are going to feel safe. You are expecting that with that person you're going to feel significant. You are expecting that with that person you're going to feel loved. And because you are feeling safe, significant, and loved, it will give you the peace of mind to become a better version of yourself. That's what you're expecting when you get into a relationship with somebody. Nobody expecting to get into relationships with somebody and be anxious and depressed and angry and upset all the time. That's not what you are expecting and looking for when you get into relationships. Nobody. I'm pretty certain if I ask any of you now, when you was getting into the relationship with whoever it is you're in a relationship with, or if you are single right now and you're looking to get into a relationship, your expectations are only for good things. You're not expecting for things to be negative. So imagine you take your goodly self and you're going to get married to a man and you move into his family home and you have children for this man. And while you are there in this relationship trying to keep the marriage going, he gets involved with somebody else. He has a child with this other person. And you then deciding, I can't deal with this no more. You leave the situation and your own family tell you go back into the situation. I have real questions for Omity family, you know. Like, if I could be in a position to sit and chat with her parents, I would want to know, why would you ask your daughter to go back into a situation that she's not feeling good about? What are you hoping to achieve when you ask your daughter to go back and stay in a home where she's being verbally abused, psychologically abused, cheated on? How do you think she's feeling on a daily basis? Where is she getting the strength to cope with the onslaught of negative feelings all the time? What do you think she would be passing on by way of a message to her children if she's continuing in that situation? Right? All of those things popped into my head because I'm there thinking to if I was in a relationship like that, and it's not a situation where everybody sit down like grown adults and had a conversation and decided, okay, all right, you know what? You live in your life by so, I live in my life by so. We doing this because it's a financial arrangement or whatever. If it is not a situation like that, then how do you justify saying to your daughter, go back and work things out in a situation that is clearly toxic? Let's put the violence aside, because I don't know enough about the actual, day-to-day, goings on in the marriage per se. But how do you look at a male or a female and tell the man or the woman, stay in a situation that is emotionally unhealthy, psychologically unhealthy? How do you do that? Because the person cannot become the best version of themselves. There's no way anybody, male or female, would be in a position to bloom or blossom in a situation like that. Just you that here on the live with me, think about it. If you are in a situation where every day of life you are getting up and the relationship that you are in is not nurturing you, is not feeding you, is not allowing you to be the best version of yourself, why are you staying in it? You understand? So when I saw that story where it is alleged that the parents asked her to stay in the marriage, I thought, why? In this day and age? You see, I could understand culture. I understand culture. It's not that I don't understand culture. But I also understand that a lot of these cultural norms are norms that were adhered to in the past because there was a lot of things to do with honor and shame and pride and being able to hold your head up in society, especially since things like divorce was frowned upon then. But in 2022, a woman getting divorced is not looked on in the same way. Not, well, certainly not with the same amount of shame, to my knowledge. So I started thinking to myself, are we still living in a society where people think honor killings is a good thing? Because we just like to turn up we nose at certain cultures, right? Like in the Middle East and thing, and be thinking, oh good, look at how them just treat women in those countries. But I think we need to stop and think about how we treating women right here. That a grown woman, a 40-something-year-old woman who working and have children and in a marriage, she could be killed, and people are actively talking about the shame and embarrassment that she might have been bringing on herself, which is why she went back to the marriage. So I thought, but no, that can't be us in 2022. But that is the issue of Omity. And that story rocked me, and it rocked me for a number of reasons. Omity younger than me. I am mid-40s. Omity was 41. She had like a good 40 years of life again ahead of her. Omity was 41. And based on the story that came out eventually, I am wondering how much of her adult life was she really actively happy. You understand? Y'all get any point that I'm trying to make here? Because if she had children that are around 8 years old, right? Let's say you're married to this man for 8 years and things were rocky. How much of your adult life were you really in a position to enjoy and be happy about before you died at the age of 41? All of those things were just running through my head, and I thought, this is awful. This is unacceptable. We cannot continue to be the sort of society that thinks that this kind of domestic violence, this kind of gender-based violence is okay, because it's not okay. It is not okay that people could be living in a society and day in, day out, they just mad, unhappy, and trapped in relationships that are unhealthy for them. Right? So that was the Omity story. The Omity story real weighed heavy on me. Real heavy on me. And you see, when I started to see stories about what could possess her, and I'm like, can we stop removing responsibility from the perpetrators of crimes here? Especially gender-based crimes, because it's not what possessed her, is why did the man make an active decision to go and pick up a cutlass? Or you ever try to chop up chicken with a sharp Chinese chopper? Because again, all of that play on my mind, you know. I'm like, why is a woman just cut up chicken? Why is a woman just cut up beef and thing with sharp knife? And I know how much force you had to come down with when you're chopping up a chicken. And you chop a woman to death, boy. Hey! You know what it is take to rest a blade in flesh? And a next human rest a blade in a next human? Wee, boy. The level of vex I had to be to do something like that. Wee, boy. All it different, you know. And then we had this story. I need to have a drink of water. I need to compose myself. So, there is a thing that Trinidadians like to see, because I've been hearing it all week long. I get licks, you know, as a child. And I fine. All right? So I'm going to be blunt with all you. Real blunt. I get licks as a child. Real licks. Plenty licks. And I'm not okay. And we're going to get into a little bit about why beating a child to death cannot, ought not, and must not be the way to do things. Because for the people who walking around saying, I get licks as a child, you know, and I turn out okay, I turn out fine, Aaliyah can't say that. Aaliyah is no longer in a position to say to anybody at all, I get licks as a child, you know, and I turn out okay. You know why? Because Aaliyah got licks as a child and she dead. So now let's get into this particular issue. So the story break. And when the story break, I hear this thing about a child and she fall down steps and wherever it is. And so there are a couple things you just hear when women go to the police to report domestic abuse and thing, right? They just go to report it, and or sometimes when the police show up when they hear a disturbance, the women and them they say they walk into a door, they walk into the wall, and they fall down some steps, something, right? When they have injuries and bruises. You're all going to have to excuse me for a second. My dog is barking and I don't understand why now he choosing to bark. Anyhow, so when I saw this story and I see the mother talking about how she took the child by the father and the child fall down some steps, I say, ah boy, more in the mortar than the pestle here. Let me wait. Then the story start to come out about discipline, take the child by the father. The father would never beat them. He just to pinch the child alone, this hurt him so much. Me a doubting that pinching your daughter does hurt you, you know. Me a doubting that you ain't really want to have to discipline the child in that way. Oh, sorry, not discipline. Me a doubting that you had to beat the child and you may not want to beat the child. But don't come to a big hardback woman like me and feed me the story about this is the first time he beat the child. Because let me tell you why I know it's not the first time he beat the child. When the mother gave the story about she carried the child by the father for the father to talk to the child or to deal with the child, and she leave. The minute I heard that part of the story, I said to myself, he is accustomed to dealing with the child in that way. Now, the justification that has been circulating all over social media, once we found out that the young lady had died and she had died from blunt force trauma, multiple blunt force trauma, what we learned is that there were people on social media talking about a video being circulated and how in that video, apparently the young lady, it appears, would have been touching herself or possibly exposing herself. Now, I'm not jumping to any sort of conclusions. I'm seeing Janelle here saying, don't assume. And Janelle, I am not necessarily assuming. What I am saying to you is, if you get to the point where you have beaten a child and you've beaten a child to that level, I don't think that if the original story, Janelle, is that he can't bring himself to beat his daughters, pinching the daughter is, would cause him so much pain. Surely, after the first lash, and she ring up, and the second lash, and she ring up, and the third lash, and tears start to come out she eye, and she start to cry. If he is not accustomed to disciplining his daughter in that way, he would have stopped. And I say that because I know I have seen parents who dealing up with children and not accustomed to beating children, and after they hit the child once, them more mash up than the child, right? So I don't think it's a situation where it's the first time. Janelle Camille is saying, y'all, all you need, just now, the video tripping. Let me pause for a second here. The video tripping. Janelle, this is the exact same issue that I am raising here with Will Smith and with Amar and Omiti and now with this soldier. The video tripping, Janelle, you have to take an active decision to decide that you are going to beat somebody in that way. Because when you say the video trip him, you are removing responsibility away from the person. When you say the video trip him, you are basically saying that he is not responsible for his own actions. And I am saying, if the mother, if there is a video, right? If there is a video, because I don't know for certain, and I haven't looked at the video, I've seen people on social media actively asking, adults actively asking, send the video for me now, I want to see the video. Adults on social media asking people to send them video of a 16-year-old girl possibly engaged in, touching herself or exposing herself. Adults asking to see the video, and they're asking to see the video so they will be able to see, one, they see the video, and two, having seen the video, yes, what took place was justifiable. Because when you say that the video tripped him, then what I now have to assume is that he saw the video only just before he beat the child, right? So if it's a situation where the mother saw the video and she quarreled with the child and she decided, you know what, I can't deal with this no more. You ought to go by your father for your father to deal with you on this. And let us say he sees the video at that point in time, right? And as you say, he trip off, right? So he responds. So in the time that you see the video, to the time that you went and get a belt, to the time that you hit the child for the first time, at no point in time in that entire thing, you were able to control your rage. That's what you're saying? That's where it reach. Now, you had to come better than that. And you know why you had to come better than that? You had to come better than that because we as a society that's like to talk about we have choice and we have responsibility, right? We like to talk about those things. And so I will always insist, people have a choice. People have a choice. So that happened, but there's a conversation that I had with a friend of mine. And I wanted to play a bit of that conversation because I actually put up a much longer video on social media on YouTube today. Right? It's the gist of it is we the two of us were talking about licks and the traditional licks and the culture licks in Trinidad and Tobago. Where is there we go. Right. So I wanna show you that for a second, and then we're gonna go into
young lady was beaten.
Just now.
When we hear that this child was beaten, and beaten to the point where you fell down.
That's now. I didn't put it up on the screen. Right. So there we go. Right. So this is my friend Solon, and Solon McDonald, he does a fair amount of grassroots work in a lot of different communities. And we had a long conversation on the weekend where we were talking about the culture of licks in Trinidad and Tobago. And we started talking about this issue with the child. So I just wanted to play a little clip here for you.
Young lady was beaten.
Mm-hmm.
When we hear that this child was beaten, and beaten to the point where you fell down,
a flight of
you
stairs.
received a flight of stairs.
And
Nothing.
Polytrauma, is it? It was multiple
Trauma.
injuries.
Yeah. Multiple traumatic injuries. Blunt force. Good. So I'm not a pathologist, but beating you to the point where you fell down some stairs, whether I beat you and you fall down the stairs and died, whether I beat you and you died and fell down the stairs, really isn't important. The point is blunt force trauma, abuse. I've listened to people come up with a justification that there was a video and the video justifies, he's not a bad guy
I heard about the
and
video.
da da
So
da
let me
and
make it.
yada
I
yada.
want to make it clear for
And
the
I'm like,
listeners.
ridiculous.
Let me make something clear for the
Sure.
listeners, because maybe not everybody has heard about the video, or maybe everybody has. But I, like you, via social media, would have heard that there is a video that would have been circulated. I think the allegations are the young lady had a male friend, a boyfriend, and he circulated a video. He would have passed on a video of the young lady, and she would have been touching herself in the video. So there's some sexually explicit behavior in the video. And like you, I saw people doing two sets of things on threads. One, asking people to share the video to them, please, because they wanted to see for their own self, right? They want to see what this young girl was doing. And then two, suggesting those who felt that they had seen the video, and even those who hadn't seen the video, well, if that's the kind of thing she was doing, the father was well within his right to respond in the way in which he was responding. So I just want
Madness.
So we need to stop using things to justify abuse. And I'll tell you why. There are a number of things. Nobody knows what was the nature of the relationship between the young girl and her parents. We don't know. We don't know enough. We don't know if the young lady had self-esteem issues. We don't know if the young lady was dealing up with peer pressure from friends. We don't know if she was dealing up with peer pressure from a boy. We don't know. There are a number of things that we don't know about the young lady's behavior, about why the young lady was behaving in a way that was not pleasing to her parents. Tons of things we don't know. We also, at no point in time, certainly in none of the conversations that I was seeing online, nobody asked a damn question about who is the boy that might have been causing the girl to do this, and whether or not the boy should not have been soliciting videos like that from the girl. But the other thing is this. All I hear is big people. All I hear is adults. And all I hear at some point in time wanted to do something that might have been a little bit on the risky or naughty side with somebody that all they care about. Right? Whether you're from a different era where we're doing is passing love notes, and that's a big deal to be passing love notes. Whether you're from my era where, going out with a boy and letting him feel you up, that was a risky thing to do. Or this era here of social media, cell phones, being able to send all kinds of lewd, lascivious things on demand to people whenever they ask for it. None of us here at any point in time can say that we have been able to not yield to peer pressure, whatever is the nature of the peer pressure. None of us here are in a position to say that we have not at some point in time experienced challenges and difficulties in terms of our behavior or interaction with various people. Some of us may not have transgressed. And I'm using those kinds of words specifically. Why? Because we live in a society that is very religious, whether it is very Christian, very Hindu, very Muslim, very whatever. We live in a very religious society. And in this very religious society, there is a lot that we justify. There is a lot that we allow to have happen to various people. Mostly women and children. I'm not saying that it doesn't happen to men as well, but I will say mostly so women and children of either gender just face a significant amount of abuse and oppression in our society because we always want to pressure people into behaving in a particular way to not bring shame. Because our biggest challenge in life is shame, right? That's the heaviest thing we had to bear. Shame, right? Until your shame kills somebody. So this inability to deal with shame, this inability to deal with being offended, this inability to deal with how it gonna make me look at what it ends up doing for you. And that is where I want to wrap up this conversation about abuse in Trinidad and Tobago, because I really wasn't planning to talk about this so long, you know. All you vex with Alan Sipasad, don't vex with Alan Sipasad. Alan and them here to boost my numbers. Did I not tell you all last season, don't get vexed with the trolls and them? The trolls and them boosting my numbers. All you need to encourage Alan and them to stick around. Don't get vexed with Alan and them, man. Oh gosh. So, let's move on to number 2. Oh, the live this evening might be a little long. I forget to tell all of that. Because we see each other in such a long time, so it mightn't be an hour. It could be 2 hours. Janelle Beth, you need to control your impulses. Alright? Alan is helping to build my numbers. So don't be vexed with me getting my numbers built. I need Alan to stick around and talk plenty foolishness. So, I want to move on to talking about something positive that might give Alan Sipasad a gripe, a bellywalk. I want to talk about Black Boy Magic. I want to talk about this young man. That's what I want to talk about. And he's one of 2 smooth looking, handsome, intelligent. Actually, no, 3. He is one of 3 smooth looking, handsome, talented, intelligent black men that I intend to talk about this evening. So this is Master Aaron Subero. And let me give all you the story with Master Aaron Subero. I've seen some lipstick on my teeth. So, the day this Blaxx broke out, I think was a Wednesday. So, it's a Wednesday evening, a friend of mine called me, a lawyer friend of mine called me. And he called me and he all up in the fields, right? Girl, it have this thing, this student who went Maria Regina, and he topped SCA in 2020. So I'm there thinking to myself, bitch, we in 2022. Why is you calling me with old news? Right? That was me, right? So I lie down on this call, and he they vex up in the field. So I'm like, okay, get to the point now, get to the point. He say, this boy he topped the SCA results in 2022, and they don't want to give him the President's Medal. So I was like, well, why are they not giving him the President's Medal? I mean, if he topped it, he topped it. And he said, well, it was after they reviewed his grades, so there was another little girl, she was in when they had the preliminary results, blah blah blah. So I said, okay, all right, let me go and check to see what is going on. So I take myself, my goodly self, pull up my phone and start to check to see what is really going on. So I read the story about Amanda Biko and whatever. Sorry, I can't remember if her first name is Amanda. I read the story about the little girl, right? And this the SCA thing. Then I go on Facebook. All of this happened in 1 hour, right? So let me say 4 o'clock the evening, I get a phone call. By 5 o'clock, I see Trinidad Guardian have a story. Now, when I see certain media stories, I could tell you exactly how the thing become a media story. Because the story that was being told was clearly the story from a lawyer, an attorney. So I know that what has happened is the attorneys on them send the pre-action protocol letter that they would have sent to the Ministry of Education to a media house, and a reporter at the media house writes a story based only on that pre-action protocol letter, because that is how some attorneys in this country just function. Something becomes an issue, they know they have the little friend and them inside media houses, people who benefited back in the day from hamper and house and them kind of things, so from a past government. And so as a result of that, lawyers who were affiliated with the political party that was that past government, there's been a position where they could send hot reaction protocol letter to the various media houses, and the letters immediately become stories in mainstream media, right? So I read this Guardian story, but the story was reading real. Listen, when I tell you plot hole, the story wasn't making sense. It wasn't Matson at all. Because the story was not giving you Aaron Subaru's side. As a matter of fact, Aaron Subaru's name was not even mentioned in the story. So all you were hearing, that's it, Amira Biku, thank you very much. All you were hearing in this story was that this young girl who was supposed to have topped the SCA from 2020, the award was rescinded, and then the Ministry of Education wrote to her to say they were giving her the award again because of a legal letter. But nobody was explaining to you why the award was rescinded. So I take my fast little self, and on a Guardian thread I said, well, the reason what the media house is failing to tell you here is that there was a young man who topped after the grades were reviewed. He actually topped the list with his score, and the ministry had decided that they were going to give the award to him. They were going to give him the gold medal and give the young lady a silver medal. And the family decided, no. We want the original prize that the ministry the ministry was going to give our daughter back in 2020. So at this point, when I realized, after reading the Guardian story, and I realized what is going on, I called back my lawyer friend one time. I said, hey, you see this Guardian story? And he said, yes, this is why I'm so vexed, because it is unfair. They're not giving both sides of the story. And then I said, well, hello. If you want to give both sides of the story, let me get the story. So I was then in a position to get in contact with the family of this handsome, intelligent, brilliant young man. And I got this story and I put this story out. And let me tell you something. Mainstream media in this country had no shame. Because the same Guardian and Express that was giving you only one side of the story could have easily called Maria Regina, that's the school that this youngster attended, and ask the principal for a comment and get an on-the-record statement from the Maria Regina primary school. They didn't do that. They didn't make an effort to tell any side of the story other than the side of the story that the lawyers were willing to give. So I ensured that the village showed up for Aaron Subaru. I made sure of it. Because you know what? We live in a country where we say all kinds of things about young black males. We don't acknowledge young black males doing positive things. We like to believe that young black males in this country are capable only of negative things. And here you have a young black male from a very stable background and environment, having not just done well, excelled at an exam, one of the most challenging exams for children in this country. And mind you, he would have been in the batch of students who for the first time had to sit the SCA exam in this pandemic. So he was in the group of guinea pig students, right? The ones who, boom, 1 minute in March, your life normal, and then the next minute in March, everything gone virtual, everything online, you're home in your parents' house, and there's all of this uncertainty surrounding this exam. And this young man sat the exam, and not only did he do well enough to place in, to get his first choice placement, he did well enough to top or everybody else who did the exam in the country. And I felt all my anti-genes activate. Sometimes you just see babies, right? You just go around and you just see babies. And when you go around and you see babies, your ovaries just start to kind of twist up and things, and you feel like, oh God, I want a baby. Well, I didn't feel I wanted a baby. And when I hear the story, I said to myself, I am in a position where I have a platform. And let's not forget, I have a platform with 51,000 followers now, right? We talked about that a little while ago. And if I have a platform with 51,000 followers, I going to ensure that them 51,000 followers are aware of the other side of this story. And if them 51,000 people could then share it with at least one other person, then we're making sure that at least 100,000 persons get the other side of this story. And that's how Trinidad and Tobago found out that the person who actually topped the SEA exam 2020 was Aaron Subero, because I use my platform, and every single last one of you here on Newsauce showed up for Aaron. And I want all of you to give yourselves a round of applause for showing up for Aaron, for making sure that Aaron was acknowledged, that his achievement was acknowledged. So Aaron, I want to say it again. I mean, lots of people would have put up things on social media to congratulate you, but I want to say again, Aaron, congratulations. So this is Aaron when he on the first day of school in Fatima, and here is what Aaron looks like now. Right? So first day of school in Fatima. Oops. And Aaron last week when he got his prize. It was one of my happier moments this year to see Aaron get the prize that he deserved, and to be able to, play a small role in getting his story out there. And of course the family, they were very, very, very moved by all of the support from the public. And is one of the things I'm going back to this picture because I really like this picture, this little boy. It's one of the things that I was pleasantly surprised about. No, pleasantly happy about, not surprised. Pleasantly happy about. Aaron got support across the board. Everybody, well, most, not everybody, because we're going to talk about some bitter people in a little while. But there were a lot of people who saw the injustice that was taking place. And of course, it raises questions about this SEA award and how we go about assessing this award. This thing about preliminary results, and they're not taking into consideration reviewed results. And the Ministry of Education, you need to streamline that particular process. I feel that we could do away with rushing to announce who topped the exam. We can go about announcing students having passed, and after you have done, or after people have queried and done those things, then you could put out something about the students who topped the exam, and you can award the students for having topped the exam. Although up to me, this is a placement exam. I wasn't going the route of prizes and them kind of thing, so for the exam, because it's a placement exam. But that's a long conversation, and it's a long conversation that is steeped in, again, us and feelings about pride and holding your head up high and classism and that kind of thing. So I don't want to muddy waters with that right now. At another point in time, when we're talking about the education system, we go get into that. This evening, what I wanted to do was big up some black boy magic and say to Aaron Subero, boy, we real proud of you. We real proud of you. The village was very happy to show up for you, and we want you to continue along this particular path. I also want to say that I'm proud of the parents. And I'm proud of the parents because to decide that you are going to stand up for your son in a society where plenty people might have, question why you're standing up for your son. Because I saw comments on social media where people saying, well, why the parents going to lawyers, and oh God, look, they're going to drag out this thing. And I'm going to say this. I'm glad that the parents saw that what was happening to their son was an injustice. And I'm glad that they realized that they had to show Aaron that in this here town, in Trinidad and Tobago, When there is an injustice, there is a whole legal system as well as a parliamentary system to challenge injustice. So you don't take injustice because you're afraid to muddy waters or you're afraid to rock the boat. You challenge injustice. So I was very proud of the parents as well. So mommy and daddy, take a bow for making a decision to challenge the system and to not allow the system to advantage your son. Because there are some people who feel them and them alone should have access to a legal system and to justice. All right? So that is that story. You know, I'm going to have a chat with this dog, you know. I must bring the dog for you all to see. Because clearly he wants to be seen. Oh my goodness. Hang on. Let me bring him for you to see. Oi. Come. 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 They want to see you. No? You're not coming? No, you're not coming. Come. Come. Woo, 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 woo. Come, come. 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 Come, Ralph. Back outside. Only believe that after he make all that sort of noise, he walk off. He just run off on me. I'll bring him on screen one of these days. Right, gas pains. So I couldn't not come and talk about this. No, he was wriggling up and thing too much. Yes, the dog like the owner. Very much so. Here you about Pel 2 tap. Tay Martinez, we not about that lash dog life. Try your best, eh? Yeah, he might. Yes, Richard, he may want his own show. So, gas pains. I can't not talk about, no, it's not a tiny dog, but I ain't lifting him up and he wriggling and next thing he kick down things and whatever it is. Gas pains. Right. So, now he ain't shaming my canvas. I really ain't beaten up about this at all. Actually, maybe anyhow. So, Imbert, a little more than a week ago. So not this Friday, not Good Friday. Friday before Good Friday. Imbert would have made an announcement about gas prices. Y'all want to know his name? Y'all should be naming him for me. Hold a second. I really need to sort this out. Come. And stop giving him a face. Come, sweetheart. Come. Come and say hi. Come and say hi. Let everybody see you. Right? Say hi to everybody. Right? So you see what is going on? You could stop fussing now. Right? Okay. Good. Lie down. Right. Oliver and he face honest. Oliver and he cute. It's not a treat he wanted. He wanted to be able to come into the studio. Right. Oh my goodness. So, gas pains. Let's get into it. Imbert 2 Fridays ago would have announced the removal to some extent of the gas subsidy. So, let's talk about a couple things. We have had a gas subsidy in this country since the 1970s. I think maybe 1974, somewhere thereabouts. And what the gas subsidy is was a way for the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago to be able to benefit from the fact that we produce gas here. So the first thing you need to know is this. regardless of the price of fuel, the price of oil, price of petroleum, the price of gas, regardless of cost of living, regardless of a number of things, all countries that are refining fuel have to pay something called the ex-refinery price. So I'm hoping that I remember all of the things that I need to talk about here properly. So every country, whether you are Barbados, Jamaica, Guyana, the United States, Russia, the United Kingdom, every single country, all of the countries that are refining fuel, right, you have to pay something that is referred to as an ex-refinery price. Now, the ex-refinery price is made up of a couple of things. It is made up of the processing cost, the transportation cost, and the feedstock cost. Now, the feedstock is the oil itself. So you have the oil, you have the processing cost, you have the transportation cost. And all of those things make up the price of fuel. In Trinidad and Tobago, we use about 1 billion liters of gas a year, right? And the price of fuel is, give or take, so let's say we pay $7 billion per annum for fuel, to purchase fuel. You're purchasing that fuel, and when you purchase that fuel, our government purchases the fuel at a particular price, but the price at the pump since 1974 to recently remained at a steady price. So I want you all to grasp that. From 1974 to, 2016, 2017, thereabouts, we had the subsidy on, and the subsidy was on super, premium, and diesel. For a very long time, we paid, regardless of the price of oil or the price of fuel at any point in time, we paid $2.70 cents, I believe, for super, and premium was $3. There was a very long period that was the price of those things. Diesel used to, I forget what the price of diesel used to be at a point in time. It might have been 50 cents, something like that. In any case, what the subsidy does is it prevented us from paying the actual price for fuel, the price that people in other parts of the world pay. Now, in other parts of the world, when they're selling gas to the population, they add taxes onto the gas. Why? Because taxes are added onto the fuel as a revenue generating measure. So in the United States, thank you very much, Beach, $1.50. In the United States, in Barbados, any number of countries, when you go to buy gas at the pump, you are paying, you as a person who purchasing the gas, you are paying the price of the gas, the price of the fuel, alongside taxes on the fuel, because that is how those countries generate revenue based on fuel prices, right? In Trinidad and Tobago, we don't put those prices on gas. As a matter of fact, we would have had the subsidy. So let me try and make sense of this subsidy properly. If the price, or if the ex-refinery price of gas is $7 a liter, $7 a liter, right now at the pumps, you are paying $5 a liter, right? If the price of gas, the ex-refinery price, is $7 a liter, you who have cars and go in to the gas station to put gas in your car, you are basically paying $5 a liter for gas. If the price of gas was $3 a liter, $2 a liter, what would be going on there is, if the price of gas is $7 a liter, and that's what it is this year, $7 a liter, whatever you are paying at the pump, if you're paying $2 a liter, $3 a liter, $4 a liter, that difference between how much you paying for the gas and what the gas actually costs, the ex-refinery price, that is the subsidy. That's what the fuel subsidy is. So when the government comes to you and they say to you that they are removing the subsidy, what they're doing is that buffer that the government would have created, that buffer that the People's National Movement put in place in 1974, right, to protect citizens. So you're in a position where gas very cheap for you here. Other parts of the world, gas very expensive, but here gas very cheap for you. That buffer had to be paid from somewhere else. So now let me explain. If you were paying $3, $4, or now $5 for a liter of gas, ask yourself, if gas, the ex-refinery price is actually $7, where that $2 coming from? And that $2 is paid by taxes. Now, if you're in a situation where you are producing a lot of oil, a lot of oil for sale, then the sale of oil might actually balance off in terms of the subsidy difference. But we are not in a position where we are producing as much oil now as we were producing in the past. And because production has been on a decrease with us, but we continue to refine fuel because we are still producing and refining fuel, there's been the gradual removal of the subsidy. So you are paying $5 a liter for gas. The gas is actually costing $7 a liter. Now I want you to stop and ask yourself, who's paying that tax? And what else we could be paying for that? What else could we be spending that money on if we were not using that money? So now let's go to these statements from Imbut, because I want to make sense of it. I want to look at it properly and make sense of it. So you're looking at the one on the bottom first, and then after that, actually, let me close you off. Close you off. Switch to you. And small up myself here. So, we're looking at the one on the bottom, because that's the first tweet. Gasoline is purchased by countries at an ex-refinery price based on the cost of acquiring and processing oil. It costs us in TT dollars $7 billion a year to purchase fuel, which is sold to motorists for $5 billion. The $2 billion difference is paid by taxpayers, which could be used for many other purposes. So, that $2 billion, if they closed the subsidy and we were all paying $7 per liter of gas, so we are all paying $7 per liter of gas, then that other $2 billion that they're using on taxpayers' money could then go towards something else. So I want all you to understand something here. Let me slow it down. Because as a taxpayer, right? So I looking at it from my perspective. I paying tax since the age of 19. If I am paying $5 at the pump for gas, and they're also using my tax dollars to be able to make the difference in the subsidy, me as a taxpayer, I am actually paying for gas twice. You understand that? Me as a taxpayer, I would actually be paying for gasoline twice, because I am paying at the pump out of pocket salary, and then that $2 billion, which is made up of money from the taxpayers, it means that my PAYE or health, well, no, not health, my PAYE is going towards paying that $2 billion difference. So now I want you to stop and think for a second. We have plenty people in this country. About 40% of the adult workforce who not in the tax net. I want all you to stop and think about that. Because the majority of persons who in the tax net are either people who working in the public service, people who working in the banking sector, people who working in the energy sector, right? People who are in jobs that are above board, where they registered with Border Inland Revenue, and so they pay in the PAYE when the month come. So in a situation where is really 60% of the adult working population that paying income tax, how many of us are actually toting the fuel subsidy burden for people who not inside the tax net? So I want to let you pause and think about that. Because 4 days ago, Imbert would have then said, the $2 billion fuel subsidy is not income. It is an unbudgeted additional expense. If we have to spend an additional unbudgeted $2 billion in 2022 on this, the real question is, what existing areas of expenditure would the government have to reduce to make up that additional $2 billion expense? We live in a society where every Monday morning, people is bumped their gum to talk about we need to become more environmentally conscious. We need to, become greener. We need to reduce our carbon footprint, etc., etc., etc. And yet we don't see that doing things that will make gas less easy for us to just use and burn is actually one way of cutting down on our carbon footprint. We are also not seeing that the money from that subsidy could actually be used to improve the public transportation system. So instead of spending $2 billion on a subsidy, that $2 billion could go towards improving public transportation. We aren't thinking about things like that at all. And we are also not considering that you have a whole bunch of people, taxi drivers, other entities complaining and carrying on about the fuel subsidy and the hike in gas prices. And none of them is stopped to indicate whether or not they are actually inside the tax net contributing towards paying for the subsidy. So you see all them taxi drivers associations that talking about how the price had to go up. I hope they're paying income tax. I damn well hope they're paying income tax. Because if they are not paying income tax, you who paying income tax actually carrying the burden for them. So if you are getting into their cars, you are making it easy for them to pay $5 for a liter of gas, or pay whatever it is they're paying, whether it's for gas or for diesel. Pay that price while the whole price coming out of your pocket, right? The subsidy price coming out of your pocket. So I needed folks to understand that this is really the crux of the matter with the subsidy. Because you see, it doesn't matter about things. You see, minimum wage have nothing to do with the fuel subsidy. Because regardless of minimum wage, regardless of cost of living in a country, none of those things impact on the ex-refinery price of fuel. Whether minimum wage is $17, $20, $25, whatever the price minimum, whatever is minimum wage in our country, the government still has to pay the ex-refinery price. In all of those other countries that Roger and any number of other union leaders this week was carrying on with, where they're fussing and talking about the cost of living in this country and what people making and not making, in all of those other countries, you know what they have on gas? They have taxes on their gas. We don't have taxes on our gas here. Really and truly, what Roger and they ought to be doing is lobbying for the government to stop paying the subsidy in its entirety. Let everybody pay the actual price of gas. What they also should be lobbying for is for the tax net to widen so that all of the people who not paying income tax but benefiting from $5 a liter gas gets put into the tax net so that everybody paying income tax, and it's not just me, the taxpayer, and you, the taxpayer, who foot in the bill for everybody. That's what they're supposed to be lobbying for. An even taxation system so that everybody not burdened. And then they should start to lobby for the government to use the money from the tax subsidy to be able to improve things like medical health, social services, and a public transportation system. That is the kind of conversation that I expecting or hoping to hear from our union, coming out of our union leaders' mouths. But you know what? That, a yellow donkey and Godface, make you see yet. Right? I will be sitting here hoping to high heavens that all of these persons who benefiting off of the fuel subsidy and making hototo noise all over the place would actually come out and say, you know what? This is what needs to happen. Everybody needs to be carrying the burden. Everybody needs to be carrying the burden equitably. But no, people not coming out and saying that. Nobody is coming out and saying that. And the other thing I want you to pay attention to is this. In our society, the majority of taxpayers are in the middle class, right? The majority of taxpayers are in the middle class. So if you're in that middle class, is you toting the burden, right? You toting the tax burden in this country. People who in the upper echelons, smaller in number, also benefiting from the fuel subsidy, but they are contributing less in terms of income tax and that sort of thing. So we are, in paying this subsidy, us in the middle class, who in that middle group, who toting the burden, we are carrying the burden for the small, wealthy set at the top of the pyramid. And we are also carrying the burden of all of those persons who not in the tax net, right? So everybody else who earning money outside of the Board of Inland Revenue system, people who have cash-based businesses, right? Everybody who hustling and they have business that it only functioning on cash and they never paying taxes at Board of Inland Revenue, we are carrying the burden for all of them to be able to enjoy $5 gas. And we paying $5 gas, and we also paying the other $2 towards the towards the fuel subsidy. I want all you to sit down and ponder on that, right? So you see, when taxi drivers come and carrying on with the foolishness they're carrying on with, I want to see all your Board of Inland Revenue number. I want to see all your tax receipt when the year come. I want to see how much taxes all you're paying. Show me your PAYE. That's what I want to see. And until and unless all you could show me how much tax all you're paying when the month come, I want to hear nothing about the fuel subsidy from all you. That's my position. Punto final. So, right. So that was the fuel subsidy. The next thing I wanted to talk about is spy versus spy. Now, I ain't going to stay on this topic too long because I want to move on to something that is more uplifting and, thrilling to my heart. Kamala get up one night on she forum, right? She Monday night forum and talk about how the government spying on the population. I don't know how many of you all remember this, but back in 2010, when Kamala was running to become the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, that was one of the angles that she went with, that the then Patrick Manning government was spying on the country. Now, the interesting thing is that when Kamala became Prime Minister back in 2010, there were a couple things that she did almost immediately. She had this gentleman here, Gary Griffith, functioning as her national security advisor. And Gary, in his role as national security advisor, would have done a number of things. He would have dismantled a lot of the national security apparatus, and they would have also arranged to have Reshmi Ramnarayan become the head of the SIA. So I don't know if you all remember this, but I remember very well the role that Griffith played in treating with and dealing with our surveillance, the surveillance aspects of our national security here. Me and this dog. Hey! Sorry about that, folks. So, there is a long history between those two when it comes to surveillance and surveillance activity and surveillance behavior, right? So when I hear this story, the night that she talked about it, Kamla was discussing it, and she discussed it from a very peculiar angle. She talked about how Faris, the former Attorney General, was being spied on by the government. And I thought that was a very interesting angle to go with. And I thought it was a very interesting angle to go with because I was there thinking to myself, I wonder who that know Faris real good and also aware of surveillance equipment in the country would have gone to Kamla and tell Kamla that Faris under surveillance. And then when 2 and 2 start to make 4, plus 2 more start to make 6, and then 2 more start to make 8, I paused and I said to myself, you know what? Spy versus spy must know what is they doing and what is they carrying on within this country. So in a couple of weeks' time, when I have the energy, because I will need to go and pull my sources together, I'm going to come right back here and I'm going to talk about what I am aware of that would have happened between 2018 and 2021 with respect to surveillance equipment having been purchased and used by persons on citizens in this country, and who phone tap and who phone a tap. And I hope that people who like to write 10,000 word thesis when the day come, prepared. That's all I will say. So Kamla, she advises on them, all brace all yourself. I have plenty that I want to say about this particular issue. Right. So the next thing I want to talk about now is this. So this happened yesterday. I came onto my social media and I see this picture and I had to zoom in and I had to wipe a little bit of drool out of the side of my mouth because I was like, Daddy Prime Minister? Daddy Prime Minister? All is he Papa Kid form? In he board shorts? Or is he, I mean, that look like 72 to that didn't look like 72 to me. Right? So I come onto social media and I see, the Prime Minister real flexing like a young boy in the nylon pool, right? Level eye food. And all you know me, I like them dark skin, I like them smooth. So when I see all this goodness on my page, I real make it out, I real eyeball it, I real eye it down. I say, hey, how 72 looking good, so boy? Listen, not at no point in time anybody could have get me to believe a 72-year-old man would have me like, right? So I watched that picture. After I watched that picture, I want to show you a couple things that started to show up. So we're going to talk about the Oppression Olympics. And when I talk about the Oppression Olympics, I talk about people who like to position themselves as the victim and at the same time they are the victors. So they are in a position of power. They're in a position where they have a lot of power, but they like to position themselves as victims to be able to push back and lash out at people. So let's look at a couple things. We have Crean sing with his bitter self. And listen, I could understand why Crean so upset, right? I really can. Because Crean don't have that body. And when you ain't have that body, but you want to be, you want to be flexing for the girls and flexing on the grams and thing, right? You're upset. So this was Crean's comment. I hope after that Seabat, the blight he have this country and done. So I looked at that and I thought to myself, all of this can't scroll past things at all. Like everything had to be a nasty comment all the time. So every single thing had to be a nasty comment. So I watched that. I say, okay, all right. And there's the rest of the thread. So other people jump on, right? So Ravi John jump on to say, what the sea might dry up. Roll Murad say blue soap, blue, black sage, stinging nettle, jiggerbush, and all the milk and 25 coquille brooms still can't help. Then nothing can take away that blight. So I sit down and I'm looking at, oh, listen, I set up bitterness. And I pause and I'm like, so all of this, see a picture of a man enjoying himself in the sea, the Prime Minister, enjoying himself in the sea on an Easter weekend, something that most Trinidadians are doing right now. They are crossing Tobago, enjoying themselves in the sea. All you can just scroll past it. No, all you had to sit down and a whole comment thread with just bitterness, just bile and bitterness, right? So that was that. Then this fella, I put up a post, right, saying Papa Keith 72 look like 52. What is he eating? A fella named Rick, who looked like he need to be doing 20,000 more steps when the day come, picks up my post, shares it, and he says, man looking like he ready to cap out. So I was like, okay, all right, Rick. To me, Rick spend less time online being a keyboard warrior and do some laps, but that's just me. Then somebody with a profile named Anna Elizabeth. You realize there's a certain group of people saying things like his heart pure and other shit. Themselves is the people crying when they can't get financial help from the government. And I paused and I thought to myself, every single time they have to make any sort of comment about black people is always nasty comments like that. Who have money and who don't have money and who catching their ass is always that, right? So I looked on. I was glad to see Kevin Henderson come and say, who is this certain group of people, right? Because, when I tell you, can't help themselves, always had to come with nasty comments like that. So that was Rick and Anna. Then there was this comment. And this is not a comment linked to Dr. Rowley. This is actually a comment that was linked to the SCA award thing. A guy called Varun Bey, or somebody called Varun Bey, put up a post that was so nasty and so racist because there's a set of African and Indian and what just now Indian children will not be able to become lawyers or doctors under this government. And I thought to myself, you have a situation where children did an exam under adverse conditions, right? Very adverse conditions. Those children passed. Many of them excelled. We celebrating the excellence of these children. And instead of you finding something positive and uplifting to say to all the children, you know, to say it to Aaron specifically, but to all the children, you decide that's the kind of filth and fear and hate you're going to be spewing on social media. So I was like, okay. But if you thought it was Varun alone, no. Look at Crean. This is the same week when the whole thing with the SCA awards was going on. Crean says, wait, 14 years old? I thought SCA is for 10 and 11 year olds. Aaron is 14 now. He wasn't 14 in 2020. He's 14 now in 2022. But Crean saw he want to acknowledge the excellence of the young man. He has to find a way to say something nasty and negative about the young man having done the exam. and pass the exam. So Crean comes and says, because somebody else says, well, they don't know what about this case in particular, but let's not say anything. It could be, let me read out the whole thing properly. Another person says, I don't know about this case in particular, but I think we should give consideration that the level a child is in at school should reflect their ability and not their chronological age. I say this in light of this being Autism Awareness Month, as kids develop at different rates. The thing about it is the boy wasn't 14 when he did the exam. He's 14 now. So 2 years ago, he would have been either 11 or 12, depending on where his birthday falls. So he did the exam at the correct age. You don't know. Crean puts up this piece of foolishness and you jumping on to make an uninformed comment. This has nothing to do with whether the person is autistic, whether they have a learning ability or disability or anything like that. You don't know. Leave it alone. Step back from it. Why is it that you have to say all of these nasty things? And I'm not talking about the person who's commenting. I'm talking about Crean. You see Crean posting something that is clearly nasty and going to say and trying to say something about the boy. Just leave it alone. Like, scroll past, right? Scroll past. So Crean in response says, I agree, but then did they really top the country? And that is where he is trying to undermine the achievement of the student. Crean is implying that if the young man did his exam at the age of 14 as opposed to at the age of 10 or 11 or whatever it is, then he really topped the country because he did the exam at a particular age. You understand the level of base thinking that's taking place here? I read this comment because I was sent the screenshot about 2 weeks ago. I read this comment. I turn it, so I stand up on my head. I read the comment and I thought to myself, I don't know what color socks to wear to celebrate Crean's learning disability. I don't know. I don't know what learning disability we would say Crean has. So anybody who understands what Crean Singh's learning disability is, let me know, because I want to be able to buy the proper color socks to be able to raise awareness among other people for this particular learning disability. I don't understand that level of vitriol and bile. I don't get it. So that was that. Then you had these comments about the fuel hike. So Riaz Jagun Singh says, I forget PNM supporters don't have vehicles. This won't affect them. And he's referring to the fuel hike. You see that? PNM supporters don't have vehicles, so a fuel hike wouldn't affect them. I mean, where do you go from there? Where? Why is it that at no point in time can you all make a comment about a public issue, a current affairs issue, without it having to automatically become linked to race and racist statements and attacking a particular community that you have an issue? Why? So that is Riaz Jagun Singh, that is his comment about fuel. And then he goes on to say, he and his partner Kurt Damar Singh say, and they don't buy food items from the grocery store, so yeah, the increase in prices won't affect them. And Riaz responds with, food card is life. If we not buying groceries from the store, who else would be supporting the economy in this country? Every business owner in this country has made money off selling products to the black community in Trinidad and Tobago. Every business owner, regardless of ethnicity. Because we are solid 34-35% of the population. And that's the kind of filth that people put up. What I'm grateful for is a couple things. that social media has allowed people to feel that they could say whatever it is they want. So these things that would have invariably been said behind closed doors, I now am in a position to read them and experience them and be clear on the thoughts that are running through people's minds, right? But I don't let it get to me. And I don't want you to let it get to you either. And I want to tell you why. Because we live in a space where there is still a lot to celebrate in terms of our differences, right? We live in a space where we allow people to be their different selves. We live in a space where we have to continue to learn to let people have their opinions, whether it's an opinion that you agree with or not, and you let them be. And I hope that we continue to respect that. Let people, we might not agree with everything people have to say. There's a lot that I don't agree with. I mean, none of that foolishness that I post there, I agree with. But I am going to respect that, they want to be able to say what it is they say, and I going to let them say what it is they have to say. And while they're carrying on with the nonsense that they're carrying on with, I'm going back on Instagram and taking some pictures. That's what I'm going to do. Because if they're going to be bitter, I had to fight that bitterness with something that, bringing joy to my heart. And you see this picture? The Prime Minister in the nylon pool with his shirt off. Yeah, that bringing joy to my heart. Total joy to my heart. So now, I want to talk about this. I want to talk about Blaxx. That's what I want to talk about. Blaxx is one of my favorite artists. And the thing that I like about Blaxx is that his music is a kind of music that transcends generations. Because you could be big people like myself, you could be younger than me, generations younger than me. And his music would appeal to you. And his music, there was a lot of subtlety and range in his music. So I just wanted to play just a couple of things, some Blaxx that I liked over the years. And this is the first one. Actually, no. The first one is, wait. Let me see if I remember this one. This one, 2008. That's 2008. And I thought Blaxx was going to win Road March with that. I thought Blaxx was going to win maybe like the power part of Soca Monarch with that. And Blaxx reach up on stage and run out of breath. Right? Blaxx reach out on stage and run out of breath. But me ain't gonna lie. This song mash up real fat in 2008. Real fat, this song mash up. What I liked about Blaxx's music is that there was always this earthiness state. There was always a great rhythm, like, iron part of the song. And then, of course, nice bass, nice drums. And there was a musicality to his music. Every year, I would be looking forward to what Blaxx coming with. So that was 2008. Then 2009 was this one.
I don't know about you, but I come out right now to get on bad. Get bad. Get bad. Get I trusty. Hey, trusty. I trusty. Hey, trusty.
2009. That was me on the road for Monday and Tuesday. I was only listening to Blaxx. If a track was playing Blaxx, that is where I was. I wasn't interested in hearing anything else because I was thirsty for wine. So that was 2009. Then, of course, I mean, like I was saying, there's a lot of versatility in Blaxx. So he also had some really good Juve music. So there's this one that I also enjoyed from him.
Rum. Punch it. Rum. Anything. Rum. Punch it. Rum. Anything. Dancing world. I can't miss Juve money. Dancing world. Iron and hard rum a beating.
You know. I might need a fet after this. So that was Tanti Woy, which is one of my favorite Juve songs, and that would have been back in 2011. Yeah. That was one of my favorite Juve songs that year, in 2011. So was another one. Oh, right. This one that I mean, this is one of my favorites. This is coming forward now, 2018. And for me, this was more like a hymn. It was soca, yes. And I mean, I enjoyed it in parties. But outside of the carnival season, I was listening to this a lot.
Yeah. Never let your problems get you down. Stay focused and hold your ground. Because what will kill you should make you stronger. So my problems is like steroids, boy. I get my doses from all kinds of sources, and all of them still can't kill me now. You see, as them sink me under ISO, ride out the storm, them just like a boat. So as the box me down, so I get up. They have to wonder how others get up, and every crack I see, I just see through. And by the help of God, I just get through. I just won't stop. I feel like
Listen, you see that? You cannot be having a bad day and put on that song and it ain't change your mood. You cannot be having a bad day and put on that song and it ain't change your mood. Cannot. The lyrics alone and then the melody, right? So this is one of my, all-time favorites. Like, so in terms of soca, generally all-time favorite. Then, there was this one that I felt. When I heard it, I was surprised that it was Blaxx doing it. And then, I love the music.
your expert. Burn your belly. Some boy go lose their girl tonight. Somebody go touch it for you. Somebody go touch it. Some boy go lose their girl tonight. Somebody go touch it for you. Touch it for you. You can all she goes if you want to. She go give it to who she want to. You could buy her drinks if you want to. She go give it to who she want to.
My boy, you don't own it. No girl don't want no owner. No owner, no owner. No girl don't want no owner. No owner, no owner. And let me done with what is my all-time favorite from Blaxx. I played it to start the program and I want to play it to wrap up the program. So, folks, this is me. I'm back. We're gonna give people plenty gas paying and plenty gripe this season because we are here to talk the things. Thank you so much for spending this evening with me. I hope you all enjoyed this return, and there is a lot that we have to talk about this season. Where I had a list, written down. But Jayanti come out to bat for she boy Munilal. So we had to talk about Jayanti, Lakshmi Dayal. We have a lot of issues, like things to do with trauma and parenting and gender-based violence. I also want to be talking a little bit more about money and finances and those kinds of things in this season. So we're around, we're back, season 5. We're gonna have a good time. I'll see you all on Friday, right? This Friday coming here, I'll see you all.
come in, hey.